trapped. You can't get out.
You gotta get better than that. I want 4 people to clap like there's 8 people. So, all right, there you go.
All right, excellent. I'm sure you guys came here just to relax and get away from the crowd. you're in prison.
I suppose that's a way of relaxing.
Right, exactly. Well, my name is Davidson L. Haworth. I don't know if you heard of me. I don't want to self-promote myself, but probably one of the top fantasy writers right now in the world. Excluding of course like Martin or Game of Thrones, because I don't have a TV show or a movie yet.
Yeah. You're gonna get one.
Well, you never know. Actually, I did have a meeting about 4 years ago with DreamWorks, and they actually want to turn my books into a movie, but it wasn't completed yet, so I didn't feel like giving them something that wasn't copyrighted, right? Because then they would have just taken it and said, we don't know what you're talking about. We never heard of this guy, and in Hollywood they do that a lot. But 2 years after talking with them and denying them, they came out with How to Train Your Dragon. So I kind of, when they came to me and said, hey, we're looking for a dragon story, I kind of missed the opportunity there. But I wanted live action. I didn't want, animated. I don't know. With you guys, do you guys watch animated films? I mean, I don't know. It seems to me, ever since Lord of the Rings, for me, it has to be live action. I don't know. With so much CGI. Right. So, a little bit about myself. I started writing when I was 6, fantasy novels. Read Lord of the Rings. The first fantasy book was The Hobbit. I'm sure you guys have read that, right? Yeah. Right. So basically what happened was out of college I started writing for TSR and doing Dungeons and Dragons creature descriptions and writing choose your own adventure books in the early 90s. And then I ended up getting the George Lucas syndrome. George Lucas, when he created Star Wars, he brought it to a production company and he said, well, change this, change the name of these characters, blah, blah, blah. And he says, no, the corporate is getting too involved into my storyline, so I'm just going to take it myself and sell it. And that's kind of what I did. I got tired of people telling me how to describe certain characters or an attitude of characters or changing, bits of storyline and things like that. And I actually had a friend, he used to work for DC Comics, and now he's doing independent comic books. He has his own characters and the whole 9 yards. And he said he had to quit because he was doing Supergirl, and he wanted to cut her hair, like really short. And he had to go to the heads of DC and say, hey, I got this idea, I want to cut Supergirl's hair real short, and they practically fired him for it. They're like, how dare you even change any description, it's like, and he got tired of that, you know what I mean? So he just went out on his own, and that's the trouble with, like corporate, like DC, Marvel, you can't really do a lot of changes in the characters unless you have a room full of board members to vote for the change. It's like comic conventions. During SDCC, I got invited to be there twice, and I denied them twice because it's a corporate convention. It's not fan-based, like Stockton-Con. Stockton-Con is 100% fan-based. There's nothing corporate about it. It's all about doing it for the fans, doing it for the people who are into the genres of fantasy or comic books or what have you. And comic conventions now are just not for comics, it's pop culture conventions, just everything, right? So, so I told, SDCC, they're, want to charge people for every little autograph, every little thing. And I don't know, have you guys ever been to Comic-Con at all in San Diego? It's difficult unless you have buku bucks, because you have to pay, to get into the convention. And then you have to pay for the hotel, but you have to pay for the hotel at least 8 months in advance before you even get there. Because if you wait last minute, a room could cost you like $700, right? And that's just crazy. And then to park in San Diego around the convention within a 4-mile radius, is $25 parking. And even on the street, you have to pay $25 parking. And if you don't, they tow your car away. So if you go, you have to get on the light rail system on the outskirts of San Diego and ride into the convention. And if you're carrying a bunch of stuff, it's an inconvenience. And then when you get there, it's an inconvenience because there's so many people. And then you want to see someone like Chris Hemsworth from Thor, or whatever. He's going to charge you $200 for an autograph. It's crazy. I said to myself, you know what? I'll wait till he's like 80 years old. He'll be charging $20 at a fan-based convention. And they had all the Marvel guys up there from Avengers 2, and people are like waiting in line. I need to get these autographs. Mass hysteria. And I thought to myself, how many autographs can you get? Maybe 1, 2, with all the Marvel actors up there, Samuel L. Jackson, all those guys. They're asking $200 a pop. You're just on those autographs, you're looking at $1,500. You know what I mean? I mean, come on. So that's why events like Stockton-Con is so important. You know what I mean? First of all, people who live in Stockton, they don't have to drive all the way down to San Diego. First of all, it's not going to cost you $150 to get in. It's not going to cost an arm and leg for a hotel, right? I mean, I don't know if from Stockton, I'm sure you guys are, right? I mean, what did it take you to get here? Maybe 20 minutes or something, right? Yeah, 10 minutes, right? So 10 minutes, 10 hours, right? What's the difference in hours? This cost to get in here. It's very inexpensive. It's not going to cost you $150. So that's why I think the fan-based conventions are so important. You know what I mean? And I'm telling you, you have more fun at these fan-based conventions. With all those people, you can't even move here. It's really good. So anyways, enough about me and anti-corporate mentality. So that's why I left, because of corporate. You can't even tie your own shoe without approval, basically. I have a lot of friends now. They've just gone into independent comic books. So basically, I was writing for commercials. I wrote some of the very first Netflix commercials that came out. And then started writing movie scripts, and Mel Gibson picked up one of my movie scripts. He didn't make a movie out of it. He was planning on making a movie out of my script, and then a month after that, he ended up getting in some law trouble, and the whole project was gone after that. I mean, he had to do some PR.
What was the script about?
The script was about conquistadors. Invading Mexico, the conquest of the Mexican lands, the Aztecs, the Mayans, and it was supposed to take place, right after Apocalypto. Have you seen Apocalypto at all? You should see that. It's an excellent movie. Well, the script, it takes place after Apocalypto, and Mel Gibson liked it, and he decided, I'll do this. And then there was rumors that he was going to change it from Mexico to England. And then instead of using conquistadors, he was going to use Vikings. So he changed the country and he changed the invaders. But once you sell a script, once a script is taken, once you're paid, they can do whatever they want with that script. You know what I mean? It belongs to them now. So, and that's just the part of doing freelance. So after I decided, you know what, I need to go back to my first love. I need to go back to writing fantasy novels. And I started doing that again back in 2006 when the economy basically collapsed. And I've been writing fantasy ever since. In 2006 it was the Dragons of Prali. I write historical fantasy, so it's not like, Tolkien and C.S. Lewis are the main authors that influenced me, but I write like historical fantasy, so all the locations are actual locations you can go to. They actually exist, and sometimes they use historical characters. So Prali is an actual village in Italy adjacent to the French border in the Appalachian Mountains there. So I used that village because it was very prosperous during the Middle Ages, and that was the time period where it takes place. There was a lot of battles and wars that were fought there. So, and I needed a big location to hide a dragon. You know what I mean? And it was right, yeah. And there's and in the story, the dragon is basically, surviving on its own deep underneath the caverns of the mountains, and once it is able to fend for himself, it starts, invading and destroying towns and killing people and scooping up girls and taking them to his lair and eating them. But the dragon in the first book, I wanted something different. You always hear about, the dragon that spits fire, or this or that. There's different types of dragons, especially, if you read a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, you do a lot of role playing. You have like, snow dragons and forest dragons, there's all types. So what I want to do is combine the two of a winter dragon and a dragon that spits fire. So this dragon was able to spit fire, but with his claws, see his claws into a human being and actually freezes them, so he can actually store his food and keep the meat fresh. And then he can take it and cook it from his breath, right? So I thought that was an interesting concept, and that was the first book. The second book was basically my answer to Harry Potter. I mean, I don't know if you guys like Harry Potter. I think Harry Potter basically is J.K. Rowling just took a lot of Lord of the Rings and influences and kind of ripped up from there. And I don't know, I wanted to bring wizards back to the way they were originally perceived. Have you ever seen the Disney cartoon with Mickey Mouse? And he is carrying the bales of water. He put the Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? And the look of that wizard really influenced me. So the wizard in the second is more like that. He's very deceptive, but he's an actual historical character. He actually lived in our times. I won't tell you too much, but if you get the book and read it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, that's who it is. You know what I mean? It's kind of a surprise. And then the third book is about vampires, and that was my answer to Twilight, basically. And I'll tell you, because see, when I grew up, it was all about Christopher Lee. I mean, I don't know if you guys are too young to know who Christopher Lee is. He played Count Dooku in Star Wars, but in the 70s, he did a bunch of vampire movies for Hammer Studios in England. And Peter Cushing, you know who Peter Cushing is? He played Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars Episode 4, which I consider the first Star Wars, and probably one of the best Star Wars. And so it was those two in the movies together, and it's probably some of the best vampire movies ever made, next to Bela Lugosi, Universal original movies. And this was a Dracula that would, sneak into a bedroom of a child and drain the child's blood. You know what I mean? I mean, it's really downright evil. And that's how I wanted my vampires to be. I didn't want my vampires stripping off their shirt and the sun's glistening on their chest. It's like, yeah, I'm a god among men, I'm a sexy beast, all that BS. People who read that stuff, they don't know what real vampires are. I want to bring back the real evil stuff. And Blade, I'm sure you guys have seen Blade, right? I love Blade. And I would love to have a Blade movie where he goes and kills Edward and all those. Those would be fantastic. And the thing with Blade is, in those movies, you had familiar, which were humans that worked for the vampires, because the vampires couldn't run around during the day, so they used human slaves to do it, right? And they would tattoo the human slaves. And to me, that's what Twilight is. There's no vampires in that movie. They're all familiar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're just glowing people.
Right. They're familiars with like high-end powers. And I just wanted to bring people back to real, cruel, evil vampires. So that's basically the third book.
That's what they originally were.
Right, exactly. That's what they were originally, Nosferatu, right? So I had the three baddies in the three books, and the main character, you had to, nowadays when you're writing books, even comic books, scripts, you have to think of characters that, that really have never been used or rarely used. So I use just a hapless Franciscan monk from a monastery. The storyline takes place in Italy during the Middle Ages. So it was perfect to be able to use a monk. And then I used to displace English girl who's actually an archer and that's my C.S. Lewis influence there, you know. And it seems to me after I wrote the book that all of a sudden there's a bunch of archer girls running around in TV, movies, and everywhere else, you know, like Brave, and if you've seen that. And that character actually ends up being the main hero by the middle of the second book. You know, when you're writing, sometimes characters just kind of take over, you know, as you're just free-flowing. So basically those are the third books, and because I have teenage kids, you're teenagers, but teenagers, they're hard to deal with. He's an adult. You look young for your age. So you know, they're hard to deal with, so I have to take you know, instead of writing a book every year, write a book every other year, because you really have to keep your eye on them, you know, and make sure they don't get into trouble or, you know, the wrong influences, what have you. So my next book is going to be just a bunch of short stories, you know, that comes out in 2016. So that's basically where I am today. It's interesting, you know, because I'm here in this room as like you guys, and it's like filled to the brim, believe it or not. If you go to my Facebook page, you know, I spend a lot of time in Ukraine. Actually, spent a lot of time in Russia, and a newspaper article. I don't know if it's a compliment or if it was an insult, but the newspaper called me the David Hasselhoff of Eastern Europe, which means I can walk down the street here and no one will be like just a regular guy, but over there, if I walk down the streets of Moscow, you know, you'll get a girl pulling on me, oh, hi, Davidson, you know, look, have your autograph, blah, blah, blah. It's a completely different world, and I'll tell you, and the reason why is because it's 10 women for every man over there. But another reason is in that culture, the average person reads 20 books a year. The average American reads 1 or 2 books a year. That's it. Because the reason why is we live in a society that it's movies and television. We are part of a society it's media driven. We're over there, it's all about, you know, reading, and they're very strong on the academics. So it's a completely different world. Right now I can't go there because of what's going on in the world, but you know, you got to wait for those things to pass. Me, I've grown up with comic books. I love comic books. Favorite superhero is Captain America, and nice. And my also tied with him is actually Captain Britain. I know he's a third-tier superhero, but I have family in England, and I used to spend my summers in England. And what I would do is walk to the sweet shop. I'd buy some Jelly Babies because I was a Doctor Who fan, and that was when Tom Baker was the Doctor. So I'd buy Jelly Babies, and I would pick up a Captain Britain comic book. I'd sit in the alley and just reading Captain Britain and eating Jelly Babies. So I kind of grew up with Captain Britain as well, and so I'm heavily into comic books. I'm pretty much a Marvel fanboy. I haven't picked up a DC comic book in maybe 20 years, right? But then I look at Marvel as well, and they're doing a lot of things I completely disagree with. And since this is being filmed on YouTube, I can slam them, and I hope they maybe get a lesson. You know what? Stop changing Captain America. You know what? Steve Rogers is Captain America. You know, I've grown up since the time I can crawl reading Captain America comic books, and you know, they've changed him quite a bit, and they've killed him off a few times. He always comes back. You know, they're going to kill off Wolverine, what, this month or next month? You know he's going to come back. You know, Logan's not going to be dead forever. And the thing is I realize I'm not really a Captain America fan. I'm a Steve Rogers fan. You know, because it's like, I love the Falcon. I totally love the Falcon. I loved reading Captain America and the Falcon in the 70s. The perfect partnership, right?
It doesn't seem right for Falcon.
Right. It doesn't seem right for Falcon to become Captain America. I mean, I can understand the storyline. I can understand him picking up the shield because Captain America got old, you know. But you know that whole story that Remender's doing.
So might be able to super serum will keep him.
Right. Exactly.
Keep him strong.
Right. Exactly.
Despite
Right. And I think Marvel's making all the wrong moves, especially now they're in the height of their popularity. I remember in the 90s, they almost went bankrupt. They were talking about going out of business completely. And at that time, DC was wringing their hand, or not DC, but Disney was wringing their hands like, oh man, maybe we could buy Marvel at that time. And Marvel, was like, no, we'll hang tough, and they made it through it. But then Disney ended up buying Marvel anyway. Changing Thor. I mean, not Thor himself, but they're just putting, these other people in their forms. And the reason why people love Marvel is for their characters. And I just think the new writers that they're bringing in and changing a lot of these characters, the new Captain Marvel, just complete rubbish. And maybe that's because I'm more of a traditionalist when it comes to my superheroes. So basically, what I've done is in comic books, I was buying at least $50 worth of comic books a week, all Marvel stuff, right? Now, maybe 2 Marvel books a month. Captain America, I'll always read that title, and I'm reading The New Invaders. New Invaders is great. I grew up with Invaders too. And that's it. But I was reading everything Avengers, everything connected to them. I was reading the Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, forget it. I chopped them all off. I just said, you know what? Now, 90% of my comic book reading is actually Zenescope comics. I don't know if you've ever heard of Zenescope. They're a small publishing house, but you know what? What's fantastic about Zenescope is they really love their characters. And they really care about the reader. Like there's a character, Robin Hood, take it from Robin Hood, obviously, and they kind of change it around. It's a female character. But, for example, Marvel, you have Captain America and Avengers, you have Captain America in his own title, and then he's in 5 other books, right? Like every week. And Marvel never explains, wait a minute, how can he be on Mars and on Earth at the same time, right? Where's the timeline? Marvel completely has lost their timeline. What I like about Zenescope is if you have a character in another book, they're not going to be in the other book. You see what I'm saying? And if it is, they explain to you it's between this issue and this issue. You know what I mean? They really care about that timeline, and I think it's important in comic books to keep that timeline. Now I know in the 70s and the 80s, 60s, whatever, Marvel kept to that timeline, but because of corporate greed, now you're getting Captain America like in 10 different issues. I know I'm a little over exaggerating to prove a point, but as a Captain America fan, you're basically I want to read the main title. Okay, I'll read Avengers, and then he's coming up in Guardians of the Galaxy, like they did with Tony Stark, and what have you. Just because Iron Man's popular right now, they throw him in there. Or they want to sell a few books. And I remember reading Guardians of the Galaxy, and nobody even really knew who they were, except for some of those who really read them in the 70s. And then people were like, they're making a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Who's that? What's that all about? Now everyone knows them, right? But have you guys ever read any of the original Guardians of the Galaxy at all? Yeah, it's completely different than what it is today. But I would advise really to pick those up because those stories are really, really good. Now, if you read the original, I haven't seen the movie yet, so don't tell me anything about it because I want to see it. No, good. Spoilers. But in the original Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like in the 25th century, 24th century, something like that. It's in the future. And the legend of Captain America's been dead. He's done. But to honor Captain America, the Guardians of the Galaxy actually named their spaceship Captain America. You see, which is kind of cool. But Captain America's not there. He's dead. It's way in the future. And Captain America did appear in Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's when they ended up going back in time, and I think actually it was the Fantastic Four needed the Avengers' help, and they actually went into the future and met up with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's how they ended up beating the Badoon, you know, when they were invading, you know, Earth and the other planets. That's a whole nother tangent on Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's just, I just love, you know, the old classic 70s stuff, and, you know, those timelines back then, they were very important. If Captain America was in the future, you know, helping Guardians of the Galaxy, you didn't see him in the Avengers issues at all. They were like, oh, he's off on some mission, or he's off on a planet, or we don't know where he is. But nowadays, Captain America's in 5 different issues. You're like, okay, where's the timeline? Where is he? You know? So yeah, right. So that's why I'm really